Police training is one of the issues at the heart of deadly encounters between police and black men. Many are now calling for the retraining of police officers in the aftermath of a series of police killings. Raymond Foster is a retired lieutenant of the Los Angeles Police Department and an authority on police training, and he is joining us. Thank you so much for being on Arise America. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Let me just ask you this question, because this is one that has been tossed around in our morning meetings around here, and that is, when police officers are trained to shoot, are they trained to shoot to kill always?
Well, police officers aren't trained to shoot to kill at all. What they're trained to do is shoot for center mass, or the largest part of the body, and of course the vital organs are contained within the body. But I think one of the most important things to remember is that a firearm, when used correctly, I mean, it will kill you. That's its job. And so when you train a police officer, they train to shoot for center mass, and that's where the vital parts are.
I'm just wondering, Raymond, in your opinion then, considering there have been so many deadly encounters between police officers and unarmed citizens, whether or not that training needs to be adjusted. I understand what you just said, that police aren't trained to shoot to kill, but when you are trained to aim for center mass, what's in the center mass? The heart and the lungs and all those vital blood vessels, which basically means you're shooting to kill. So should the training be adjusted?
Well, I think that the police officers need different tools for some of the encounters. Certainly the training needs to be ongoing and changed in some respects. But again, when you come back to basic firearms training, it's always going to be the same. Anytime you go to deadly force, that's what's going to happen. Now, there are other things that run up to a use of force, and maybe there's tactical training or some kind of interaction training. But when it comes to shooting with a gun, that's what's going to happen. Somebody's going to get hurt.
I want to ask you a question. I heard another chief of police of another city, where it doesn't really matter, say that there's a difference between criminal profiling and racial profiling. And of course, there's a great accusation of racial profiling in many of these deadly interactions. Can you explain that?
Well, police in the United States is particular in two aspects. The first is that we use reasonable suspicion. The second is probable cause. And if you wanted to add a third, it would be discretion. And reasonable suspicion is when a police officer sees somebody doing some activity based on their training experience, which they equate to either criminal activity and or a crime. That's not the same as probable cause, which is when they know or they have reason to believe that the person has committed a crime. So we don't profile people. We look for reasonable suspicion. Now, that's different than security checkpoints and those kinds of things where there is a degree of profiling that goes on based on experience. But for the street cop, it's not profiling. It's either reasonable suspicion, or it's bad police work.
Let me ask you this. What type of psychological examination or assessment goes on before a police officer is let out on the street with a gun? I'm thinking of the officer that killed the 12-year-old boy in Cleveland who had received really bad marks at another precinct and somehow was hired at this police department, and many other cases like that.
Well, almost every police agency in the United States uses a couple of psychological batteries, the tests, the MMPI and another one. And then there's an interview with either a psychologist or a psychiatrist, and they're looking for a certain kind of person to be a police officer. So any kind of psychological problems are generally screened out very early in the hiring process.
Can you just sort of give me, I know this is a very broad question, but a description of the modern day police officer?
Well, the modern day police officer is not really a lot different than the police officer from 150 years ago. What police officers do is, a good police officer, the foundation of policing is talking to people. That's all evidence that you gather. The ability to talk to somebody from a dope fiend on the street to the CEO of a corporation. So that aspect of policing, to be able to come up and talk to everyone. The second thing that police officers are always curious. They see what's going on around them and they ask them, what's that about? And I think the third thing for a good police officer is they're assertive and they're not afraid to take charge or to come up on a situation and figure out what's going on. Those are the qualities that you generally look for in a police officer.
Raymond, let me ask you very quickly, I'm all out of time. In your opinion, do you think police officers need to be retrained?
I think police officers need to be continually trained. I think the conversation's wrong. I think the conversation needs to be about the justice system and why we seem to have two justice systems in the country. It's not about policing, it's about the system.
Raymond Foster, thank you so much. It was a pleasure speaking with you.